we can say yes, we are aware of the cases, and we had met with the relevant stakeholders to ensure that we put a stop to these cases before they escalate.
So what are you doing about it? Because yesterday, according to Mdu, there was yet another incident that took place. I don't know if this is one of the two that has been reported to the police. But given the fact that these individuals are operating in broad daylight, what are the police doing about it?
The incident yesterday is one of the two that we have noted. As the police, we work closely with community members, and we urge them to organize themselves as well, to be part of neighborhood watches, be part of street patrols, and for residents, as much as they can or as far as possible, not to leave houses unattended. We do not have enough police officers who can be at every household every time of the day. So these criminals, they don't just go to any house. They target houses. They study your movement. They know that at this time of the day, there's nobody in the house. And if there's a strong neighborhood watch where your neighbors are concerned about safety in their area, instead of taking videos and share them widely, they will call the police immediately. They might take videos here for evidence, but at the same time call the police, not for police to come on the after effects. Because as and these things are happening, maybe a patrol van just passed by, or it's another crime somewhere. So we say, committee members, as much as possible, let's come together. Let's work together. Yeah,
Lieutenant Nechunda, it's unreasonable to expect that people will have somebody in their homes all the time. It's during the workday. People are gone out to try and earn some kind of living for their families.
It is almost unreasonable, as you are saying, to have 10 houses in the vicinity without anybody there. People are taking videos, like we saw the videos, so there's somebody in the vicinity. We are saying, if these people group themselves together and have a strong relationship that I'm your neighbor. I'm not here from 8 to 5. You are here. Maybe there's a helper or there's somebody who's there. Can you please watch over my house as well? When you see things like this, as you are taking the video, same time you are calling the police. Because in this incident, police are coming at the after effects. Yes, as the police who could have been there or should have been there, but like I said before, would not have so much police that we're going to have police officer at every street corner of every gate of every house every day.
Lieutenant, if in 1 hour, just of this open line, we can have listeners that are calling in to tell us where they have tracked this bakkie and its movements, right? We've had those that are talking about the houses being ransacked. There was another caller who talked about how they stole cables. In broad daylight, they were drinking while stealing these cables. Police were nowhere in sight. And we managed to uncover all of that in an hour. Are you telling me that it is impossible for the police to track these people down, especially given the fact that there's an idea of where their movements are, that they're going from one community to the other in the South Coast?
Maybe I should explain this to you, Cathy, and the listeners, that it is one thing to investigate via the radio, and it's another thing altogether to do the real job to get to the criminals. As the police, as much as the videos are out there, we have to seek tangible evidence that lead us to the real suspect. These vehicles, like we are saying, there are two vehicles using the same number, which doesn't even exist. So it's a fake number from somewhere. We are searching. They can't be checked on the system, so we have to do the manual checking on the suspects themselves, and we are doing that. The fact that we community members are saying one vehicle, we are saying two, that means we are a step ahead because we have done the job. and it's a matter of time before we get to the criminals. And when we are looking for them, it doesn't mean that they won't move to another area and try and do the same crime. Community and the police, when somebody identifies that vehicle and informs us, we will respond. It's something when they were saying, we saw this car somewhere, we called the police, nothing was done. Then we should look inside on ourselves as to who did not do the job.
So I'm waiting for the part where police do what police are supposed to do, which is investigate and uncover crime. So how are you going to do that? How are you going to make sure that communities are not being terrorized by this gang or this group of people?
We have tasked our informers to look for the vehicles that we have identified and the vehicles that have been seen circulating on the videos. We have gone to have a meeting with our CPF structures to see that you are supposed to be our eyes and ears on the ground. So we can't have vehicles doing as they please. We can't have suspects going into the house and take everything as if we don't have neighborhood watches, as if we don't have our CPF. So we have done that to strengthen that's a sharing of information, and also to the victims and the videos that are circulating, so that yes, we do have videos that were taken at this particular time, but police were only informed at this particular time. What could have been the problem? To close that gap, that whenever these criminals are spotted, we are informed immediately so that we can act. That's why I said I'm waiting for the point where police have been informed timelessly, and we on our side.
So basically, you're waiting for them to strike again, but you're hoping that this time somebody will call you before they're done, so that you can arrive on the scene.
Our mandate is to prevent crime, not to wait for anybody to strike. In case a case happened, we investigate. Firstly, we need to prevent. That's why we are looking for them now. We know what cars they're driving, and as the police, we know that they must change cars, like they change from black to white. They must change to another make of a car. They must move to another area. That's what we are doing as the police. Our intelligence are on the ground. We are talking to our CPF structures and even our patrols. We know the patterns that we need to take to check their vehicles. We are not waiting for a crime to happen, because our job first is to prevent crime from happening. And where it has happened, we are bound to investigate.
Lieutenant Colonel Robert Nechunda, he's the KZN Provincial Police spokesperson. Yeah, if you're out in Durban, in the affected townships along the south coast, I wonder if you're feeling any safer after that? Are you feeling any more confident that you'll come home and all your furniture will be there?
If you're active on social media and love SAFM, we hope you'll take a moment to like or follow our SAFM page on Facebook and Twitter. These are the best places to find all the guest information, conversations, and stories you love from your favorite presenters, along with regular updates from SABC News. And don't forget, you can send your questions to feedback@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversation. Nelson Mandela once said,
"It is in your hand to create a better world for all who live in it."
SAFM urges you to identify those in need around you and to do what you can to make a difference to them. Tata Mandela went further to say, what counts in life is not the mere fact that we have lived. It is what difference we have made to the lives of others that will determine the significance of the life we lived. SAFM celebrates Mandela Month. Talking finance with Brian Hirsch, making sense of your finance.
If you have a life insurance but you are smoking weed only, do they consider you as a smoker or a non-smoker?
He wants to know that if you smoke weed, marijuana.
But I can tell you, if you tell the insurance company, I don't smoke, but I smoke weed and marijuana, I think they may either load you or decline you.
I don't know why, man. Yeah, hey, 'cause I'm high. 'cause I'm high. Are you really high though, man? He really is high, man. Shoop, shoop, shooby doo wah. Get jiggy with it. Skippity bee bop.
All right, let's get into talking finance with Brian Hirsch. Brian is about to change my mood. My mood was changing very quickly, but but I'm going to come back and, who's that?
Well,
morning, Brian Hirsch.
Morning to you. Well, while I blush every time I hear that jingle, you pop. It's amazing to see.
It is a nice jingle, isn't it?
It is a nice
You're
jingle.
the best, Brian.
Yeah.
Okay, so today, the last Tuesday of the month, we're dealing with questions. I see some of you are still responding to what the police officer had to say, the spokesperson of the KZN Provincial Police had to say. We'll pick up on that issue in the second hour and hopefully also continue with it into tomorrow's show. So we've got quite a number of questions, Brian, as we conclude our series then on financial planning. I think it was a very good series. We all learned a lot, and judging by the questions that we received last week, I think that there's a lot of interest just for people to understand certain things better.
Yeah, Cathy, we didn't finish all the messages. We couldn't get through them last week. Are we going to repeat them now, or do you not have them on tape?
No, so what we'll do, I think, if we can maybe begin with your questions for the month, and then we will try and fit those in,
Yeah. Look, what I do is I try and take all the generic questions I've had that are similar in nature to try and deal with them, because, if more than 8 or 9 people ask me the same or similar type of question, then that's something that everyone, I always make the comment, you can never ask a stupid question, you can only get a stupid answer. And I often say that if I give a lecture and there are 300 people and I'm talking to them, and then after I've spoken, the master of ceremonies or host says, please, any questions, and no one wants to put up their hand first to ask what they consider the most stupid question. And when the hand goes up and asks that question, you can see the tension in the room drop, because they've asked the question that everyone wanted to ask, but no one had the guts to ask. So have you got my questions there this morning?
They've been brave enough to crack the ice effectively.
Yeah.
No, please go for it, Brian.
Okay, well, the first question I've had is, how will falling interest rates help me? So many people have been hearing that interest rates are likely to come down. We didn't get any rate reductions this last week, although I do believe we'll get petrol reduction. I don't know if they've announced it yet. I think with the oil price being below $80 and the rand having improved, although slightly weakened in the last week or so, I think we may. But how will interest rates help me? Well, I've done some calculations, and I've said for a bond around 1 million, 0.25% reduction is what we're hoping for in September. That'll save you 2,500 rand a year. And if we get another quarter, you'll be saving 9,000 rand a year. Substantial, if you think about it. 0.5% rate reduction. Currently, repo at 8.25, prime at 8.75. You get that 0.5% reduction over the next 4 or 5 months. You could be saving on 1 million rand 9,000, on 500,000. You could be saving 4,500, 400 rand a month. A big amount saved that has good impact on inflation coming down, as well as petrol prices reducing.
Brian, can you believe the fact that interest rates have remained so high for what feels like so long?
Well, I have a simple view about interest rates. I understand where demand for good luxury goods and spending pushes up the cost. But in South Africa, inflation is pushed on us. I mean, if you think about it, petrol prices, food prices, and all electricity prices, rates and taxes, this is not something that is luxury, and this is not something that people are going out and spending money. In matter of fact, if you look at retail sales, you see retail sales are down in this country. So consumers are having these high increases pushed on them, and yet that's pushing up interest rates. So there's an argument that should we be following the rest of the world? Should we be doing this? But I understand inflation targeting the mid-price between 3 and 6%, which is what the Reserve Bank has set inflation targets at. We should be down at the 4.5%. I think that we need to be a little bit bolder and start to reduce interest rates a little bit quicker than globally. However, one thing about lower interest rates means money may not be coming into the country buying our bonds, because our bonds have strengthened in the last 6 weeks, which means that money looking for high interest rates may not be attractive, which could have an impact on the currency. And if the currency weakens, that in itself is inflationary, because we import so much. I mean, if you think about it, there's so many things we import. We send out the raw, we come back with the finished goods, we all the petrol, oil price, all these things, medicines, all these things are pushed on us globally. But it would be sensible for us to be a little bit more aggressive when we start to cut.
All right, let's get more into those questions.
Then the next question is, if you're planning retirement in 6 to 12 months, should I consider reducing the risk? So if you think about a portfolio, some portfolios have bands where they have lifestyle bands. So if you're getting closer to retirement, they take a little bit of risk off the table. But let me make this comment to individuals. When you're retiring at 60, 63 or 65, you've still got the possibility actuarially to be living another 20, 25 years, even longer. People are living that much longer today with modern technology, which means if you're going to downweight to something so conservative, how are you going to beat inflation? Because don't talk about CPI, talk about retirement inflation. Retirement inflation is driven by 3 components. 1, your cost of food. 2, your cost of healthcare, and your cost of all the utility bills you have, and those are not going up 5 or 6%. Those are going up anything between 8 and 9%. I think electricity went up 12%, medical aids went up 9 or 10%. We've seen food prices go up 6 or 7. So if you've got debt and interest and inflation comes down, and your debt cost is reduced, that's good for those that have debt, but at retirement you shouldn't have debt. So how are you going to beat the 7 or 8%? So yes, you can look at your situation. Maybe what you should be considering, that in the first year of retirement, you should be taking less from your retirement package. You shouldn't be drawing as much as you may need, so that you can just wait for a period of time for your assets to start growing, and then maybe working backwards, whatever the growth was in that first year, take 60 to 65% of that growth and start drawing that from a pension. So,
Brian, as you're talking about investment, I was thinking about how we've never spoken about people's, I don't know if we can call it financial personalities, but how they approach investing. So you've got those that are more conservative, you've got others that love to take a risk. Does that need to change as you get older?
It does need to change, but it depends on your circumstances. Everyone's circumstances are different. But you've always got to be saying, people as they get older want to take less risk because they're not going to be working. But if you take less risk, the biggest risk you can take is inflation. How it's going to affect the eroding and the purchasing power of what you need. So yes, that's why I keep saying, you need to understand what you're doing. You need to cut the cloth accordingly, have 3 things in place: home paid for, I've always said, an adequate medical aid, and no debt. You need to have that at retirement. So yes. So someone needs to sit with you and define your requirements going forward with the capital you've got available. And the one thing that I like to add at the same time is, I get asked all the time, should I retire earlier? Definitely don't retire earlier if you can help it, because your money's got to last longer. So if you retire at 60 instead of 65, and let's say you've got 25 years to live, you now got to save for 30 years, and you've saved 5 years less, and the last 5 years prior to retirement, you've got all your capital growing, as well as future contributions. And the difference between retiring at 60 to 65 is probably 60 to 70% more in your funds if you retire 5 years later. So just be careful of that. And then I just want to make a comment about the two-pot system, which I'm going to be dealing with next week. But can I tell you, I've understood from some of the institutions I've spoken to that this is going to be facilitated online. Companies may get 10,000 withdrawals or retirements a month. They're expecting 200,000 in the queue waiting for the two-pot system. So let me just share this with you. They will require your full names. Make sure your full names are there. Your ID, your email address, your cell number, and bank details. I'll repeat that. Make sure they've got your full names, your ID, your email, your cell number, and your bank details. So if you're one that are going to go in on the 1st September to want to borrow money, make sure take money on the two-pot system. Make sure now, over the next month, the companies have your full details. If you have to go online and you don't have the facility, I'm sure they'll be able to go also through your phone. And if you're working for a company, which you probably are, you'll be able to ask the company to help you go online. But I'm going to be dealing with the two-pot system in a lot more detail next Tuesday.
Wonderful. Is that it on
That's
your
it,
side?
yeah.
Okay. All right. So we're going to then start getting into the questions that you are sending through. It's edging towards 10:30, so we'll take the latest headlines and then I'm back with Brian Hirsch.
Thank you, Mohlahlana, and a very good morning. With the news headlines, ke Modupi Makgalemele. 3 suspects have been arrested following a cash-in-transit heist on the N6 between East London and Stadtruim in the Eastern Cape. Some residents of Bloemfontein in the Free State say they support the ANC's decision to expel the former party president Jacob Zuma after he campaigned for the rival MK party. And the trial of 8 former members of the Presidential Protection Unit who allegedly assaulted 3 people on the N1 freeway last year will resume in the Randburg Magistrates Court in Joburg this morning. A full news update coming up at 11.
Taking a look at your markets this morning, the rand is currently trading at 18 rand 32 to the dollar, 23 rand 60 to the pound, and 19 rand 86 to the euro. Markets in Asia were mainly weaker at the closing bell. The JSE is mainly lower in mid-morning trade. Markets in Europe are mainly higher this hour. Gold is trading at $2,389, platinum $954 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $79.75 a barrel.
Talking Finance with Brian Hirsch, making sense of your finance.
We continue the conversation talking finance with Brian Hirsch. So here's a question, and it's around whether or not South Africans are overtaxed, Brian. And our listener wants to know if there's a means test for politicians and is asking that we create a list of taxation and create what taxation is paid by everybody employed or unemployed, including goods used by children. Is that something that we can do, Brian, realistically?
Well, look, the tax tables deal with the lower earners and the higher earners. I think any government employee, any member of parliament is taxed accordingly to the tax tables. Any fringe benefits we get are taxable. So I don't think there's much you can do there. Up to 237,000 rand per annum, you don't pay tax. Although the tax rate is 18%, but when you get all your deductions, remember, when you do your tax return, you're entitled to deduct everyone. If you're under the age of 65, I think you get around about 23,000 off your tax bill. Over 65 to 75 is 26,000, and over 75 is 29,000. You also get an amount on medical aid. You get 364. It's around about there. 364 for the first member, and for the second, and then for the second dependent, and then any further dependents, I think it's another 260 a month. So that also comes with your taxable income. So up to about 220,000, you're not paying tax. When you get to above 237,000, you pay tax at 18%, and anything above that 31%. When you get into the very high levels, you're paying tax between 40 or 45%. So tax is those more with earning more money are being taxed at a higher rate. It's not as if they are they. I mean, everyone throughout the world always says, "I'd like to pay less tax." Now, let me say one thing. It's everyone's right to avoid paying tax using concessions given by government. And no one has the right to evade tax, but to avoid tax. And if you don't make use of those avoidance measures, you're to blame. I think of two, for example. One is where you contribute to a retirement annuity, and two, where you put money into tax-free savings accounts and tax-free savings investments. If you're not doing that, it's your fault. Furthermore, you must also realize that there are other methods. You need to put in a tax return. Now, we're now into tax season. And remember, if you're putting in a tax return, any expenses you've got incurred in producing income is deductible, but you need to satisfy revenue with all that information. If you drive a car and it's used for business, you need to keep a logbook, and if you do that, there are deductions. If you're entertaining, all these things in terms of the book, you can go and ask revenue. Particularly if you're in business and these are costs that you've got, they are expenses, are tax deductible, and so you need to. So if you don't do anything, then it's your fault. But if you make it your business to find out where can I save tax, what am I doing, then really that's all the advice I can give.
Is there a place where people can go to, Brian, whether it's a website or just some kind of resources that are available to learn more about tax avoidance?
Yes, you can. You can go to the SARS website,
Okay.
South African Revenue Services website, and pick up everything. It's all there. You can go to SARS offices and they will help you. I had a client who phoned me about 5 weeks ago. He said he knows he's going to get some tax back. I told him there's nothing I can do for him. He needs to go to the tax office. He went to the tax office on the beginning of July. They told him it'll take till the 15th of July, and he got back 20,000 Rand.
Wow.
Having gone there. So they are willing to help consumers. It's up to you to make use of it. If you don't ask, you don't get.
All right. Thanks for that, Brian. We've got a number of questions coming through on the WhatsApp line. Remember, you can also send through your questions on 0614 104 107. That's on the WhatsApp line, 0614 104 107. And, of course, on the studio line, 086 000 2032.
Hi, good morning, SAFM. Tell me, just a quick one, how long after a person has passed on can the spouse claim on the UIF for the deceased person?
Good morning, Oscar D, and good morning to Brian. It's Fred the Tracker. My question is on the two-pot system. Do I choose to want to be in the pot, or I don't want to be in the pot? Is it compulsory for me to be participating in the two-pot system? Is it compulsory? Do I choose? Do I have a choice to say I don't want to be inside the pot system?
Freddie, the truck driver, I love that how you asked the question.
Okay.
Do I want to be in the pot? Don't I want to be in the pot? Which question are you going to start
I'm
with?
going to deal with the UIF.
Okay,
I investigated the UIF.
Yeah.
You certainly have a claim against UIF. I don't think there's any time period. I think once you've got the death certificate and the statement from just confirming that death, notice of death, then I think you can go to UIF and claim. I don't think there's any. Look, they slow in their implementations. of that, they are a little bit slower, but that's not a problem. And then regarding, do you have to be in the two-pot system? You have to be in the two-pot system simply because that the rules for retirement funds have changed. Up to the 31st of August, you have your all monies that have been paid up to that date. The value of your fund is ring-fenced. It's actually 3 pots. That's 1 pot. And your future 2-pot system gives you your savings pot and your retirement pot. But you can opt out of that into the 2-pot system where you don't need to have that savings account. You can opt out. But I will be dealing with it next week.
Okay. All right. More questions for you, Brian?
Hi Brian, Anonymous Ian, and I'm a Bolt driver. Brian, can a Bolt driver apply also for a tax return to SARS? Because I can see every month as a Bolt driver we get that message and the tax and the details, the tax that was paid and stuff like that. Can we also apply for the tax return? And secondly, as a self-employed, is there anything that one can do also for him, like in the future, to start getting also a pension? Or what can I start paying? Or what can I start doing now? So in the future, when I retired, I can still have some incomes. Thank you, Brian.
Okay, so Brian, he's asking, as a Bolt driver, can he file? He's looking for some tax returns, and he also wants to know what can he start doing to save for retirement, because he's considered self-employed. So, but he wants something like maybe a provident fund. I think a retirement annuity is probably one of the good options for him. But he's asking, what can he do to start saving for retirement?
Yes, most definitely. You can talk to SARS and go and see one of their officers in terms of completing a tax return, particularly if you've got costs incurred in creating that income. And on the second side, the best thing to do, again, I don't know what your earnings are, but if you contribute to a retirement annuity, anything up to 27.5% of your earnings can go into a retirement annuity. There is a maximum of 350,000 Rand a year. I just need to make that point. And you can get a tax deduction off your taxable income, which means you'll be saving tax, and that tax and revenue is then contributing and helping your savings for retirement. And that's the first point for me. You know, if you're paying tax, if you're not paying tax, then you should definitely consider tax-free savings, tax-free investments, because tax-free investments, what it means is, as in the retirement annuity, you make a contribution, your contribution is tax deductible, and then within the retirement annuity, there is no tax payable on capital gains tax, there's no tax payable on any interest earned in that retirement annuity, there's no tax payable on dividends and property income. So everything earned is tax-free in that retirement annuity. When you receive the retirement annuity, then you pay tax on your pension. But having said that, in the tax-free saving, you've got the exact same thing, up to 36,000 Rand a year, and a maximum in anyone's lifetime of 500,000 Rand, which is something like 14 years of contributions. But those are two areas that you should, and either one of you can choose virtually what investment you want to be. In a tax-free saving, you can put 100% into money market, 100% into the market, 100% in property funds. Under a retirement annuity, there are some restrictions. 45% can be invested offshore, only 75% can be invested in total in equities. You've got to buy something a little bit more like government bonds or money market instruments. So there's good alternatives.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. I'm back with more of your questions for Brian.
When Freddie, a troubled woman, is nearly assaulted outside a nightclub, the toilet attendant steps in to help. Baba, a former child soldier, acts with swift, unstoppable brutality. She's entranced. The pair form an instant, intoxicating connection. Something dark within both of them quickly emerges. Soon, they set about exacting revenge on people from Freddie's past. Baba's skill for violence and Freddie's tinge of psychopathy prove a lethal combination. But they are not the only ones on the hunt. We hunt together, Mondays to Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on S3. Starts 24th of July. Channel your best drama with BBC Primetime. Only on S3. Open up.
S3.
Divas in Concert, a monumental event, a captivating celebration featuring Simpiwe Dana, Thandiswa Mazwai, and Makazi. Hosted by the ever-charismatic RPC Pope. Join us on the 10th of August from 10 a.m. until 6 p.m. at Max Park Sports Complex. Tickets are available now at Web Tickets. For a chance to win tickets, follow the Star newspaper at the Star_News on Twitter.
The incredible story is written by the classical performance of a magnificent Olympian. Josiah Tugwani painted Atlanta in the colors of Africa Borwa. He took center stage and rounded off a memorable Olympics in style. Tugwani emerged victorious in a 124-man battlefield from 79 countries to claim gold in just 3 seconds. Every countryman wants a medallion. Ezekiel Sipeng delivered silver in the men's 800 meters. Marianne Kriel joined the podium with a collection of bronze in the women's 100-meter backstroke. Magical moments of the Olympics. Brought to you by SABC Sport, proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024. For the love of the game.
#SAFM Talking Point.
All right, we continue talking finance with Brian Hirsch. Brian, here's a message from Stephen in Kroonstad, and we did hear from Steve last week, and it was around the GEPF, the Government Employee Fund, and he had asked about the tax implication and the two-pot system that is introduced, because he is divorced from his wife, but they agreed not to touch their pension funds. And he wanted to know, number one, can she access his portion given the implementation of the two-pot fund? And I think you answered that question clearly. And now he's asking about the tax implication of the two-pot system.
Well, I did investigate the whole divorce situation. Any divorce that's in effect as at the 31st of August, what would have happened and should have happened in terms of the divorce agreement and the arrangement with the pension fund, the benefit should have been split between the two spouses. And if you had moved the money to a preservation fund, let's say there was R1 million, spouse A has got R5 million in their pension fund, 500,000 would go to a preservation fund in the other spouse's name. There will be no tax implications whatsoever, tax neutral. Each of them could access 10% up to a maximum of 30,000. After the 1st of September, if the divorce comes about, any divorce comes about, you'll still be able to split the funds, and you'll still be able to draw the 10% up to 30,000 rand. So I don't understand why, if a couple get divorced and they've agreed in terms of the divorce agreement and that with the pension fund, why they haven't split the benefit, because it's so easy to do it. Rather split it, because there are complications, because the future growth on that unsplit fund belongs to the working spouse, not the spouse. So if you've got R1 million and it grows to 2 million, and the spouse was entitled to 500,000, 10 years later, all she's going to get is 500,000, assuming it's a female. So rather split it at source. Don't take it. Move it to a preservation fund so there's no tax. But each one of them has your own retirement planning.
All right, so you heard the advice there, Steve in Kroonstad. Brian is saying it might be better for you to just move your portion of that fund into your independent preservation fund account and leave it there. Okay, more questions, Brian?
Good morning, Cathy and Brian. Cathy, please ask from Brian that if you were working, you left your workplace in 2021, do you still need to do those tax returns? And is it a different time between people that are working and the people that are not working? I will hear the answer from the radio. Thank you so much. It's Lucy.
Hi, Lucy. Lucy, if you're not working, you can apply to SARS to suspend your tax return, because you may return to work at some stage. But you pay tax while you're working. When you're no longer working, you don't have an income. And even if your income, as I made the comment, if your income is below 200,000 Rand and you've got a medical aid and various and any other expenses, you get a rebate under the age of 65 of 26,000. So yes, you should contact SARS and see that SARS now just suspends the need for you to submit a tax return. But I still believe that if you're going to go back to work, rather just have it suspended until such time as you go back to work and then have to complete a tax return. And often people don't realize by submitting a tax return, you're almost always entitled to that rebate, and you're also entitled to any, if you on a medical aid, to all those medical deductions as well.
Okay. Peter, you're calling us from Makanda. Good morning.
Yes, good morning, Cathy. Cathy, mine is rather a simple one about an executor of an estate who is giving me the runaround, and my lawyer for 4 years, my dear. She's been diving and diving and so forth, so much so the High Court allocated her a lawyer, and now that lawyer has pulled out, which takes me into 5 years now of my claim not being resolved. I just want to find out from Brian, what redress can I have about my losses and other claimants as well, criminally or litigiously, because she's streetwise. Listen, I claimed for a car, and then I had a colleague who is a professor who also claimed for a car against this woman. The professor had to get the blue lights of the police and the top brass of the police to go, because so violent is this lady. Even when they were there, the police were, were wanting to call a backup. She's so dangerous,
Okay,
Peter,
before
Yes.
you go on, without giving us much details, the estate that you're making a claim against, is it a
Yes.
company? Is it an individual? What's the story? What
No,
happened?
It's an individual.
And what happened? What happened, Peter? What are you owed?
I'm owed about 50,000 plus interest, which comes to about 80,000. It was the in community of property. Both the man I claim against and his wife, they both died of COVID within a week of each other. So it's that estate now. Against that estate, I'm claiming.
Okay, so let me come in here for a moment. Was the estate under 250,000 or above 250,000? The total estate?
It's about, it's under 250. It's about 80,000, yes.
In total, are you the sole beneficiary of the estate?
No. I'm a claimant.
Okay. How big are the other claimants? Are they above 250 or under 250 in total?
Brian, I wouldn't know. I really wouldn't be in a position. I live in Makanda, and this lady is in Port Elizabeth.
Okay, so let me ask you this.
The
The reason I'm trying to get to the bottom of it, because any estate under 250,000 is dealt with very differently to an estate above 250. Anything above 250, one needs to get an executor, and that has to go through the master's office. And I'm not going to make it easy for you, because where are you phoning from?
I'm phoning from Makanda, and it's
Which province is that?
I beg your pardon?
Which province is Makanda?
Eastern Cape.
Eastern Cape. Okay. What you need to do is you need to get hold and go to one of the master's office. Their master's offices all over the country, and you need to go to the master. Normally I'd say write to the master, but the master's offices are in a bit of a mess. I know Johannesburg, Pretoria has been suspended pending changes. So what you need to do is you need to go to a master's office and you need to report this to the master. The master has records, but now that's what I'm trying to say is if it was under 250,000, then it could have been dealt with differently, and it didn't. It's not as reportable as much as in a state under 250. Above 250,000, any executor has to be registered. They've got to provide the master with guarantees that they don't run away with your money, either by way of an insurance policy or something of that ilk. But really, that's what you need to do is you need to find out where's a master's office. Where did the person die that you're talking about?
Yes, Brian, I've covered all that ground. It's been already lodged with the master's office in Port Elizabeth.
Port Elizabeth, okay.
And then now what happens is that it's under 200, it's about 80,000. But then the master then appointed a lawyer because this lady is not educated. Now, that lawyer now who has been appointed by the master has given up because this lady is not cooperating so that this money is paid out to me. You get me?
Yeah. Look, I tell you what, we're going to take your number down. I'll make some phone calls for you. Don't promise success because of the master's office, but we'll take your phone number back. I'm asking studio to take it, and I'll call you later in the day.
Thank you so much, Brian.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
All right,
Cathy,
Peter.
You hear so much of this where states go on for years because they badly administer. The executive doesn't do their job. But, the question is, it's a lot easier to wind up in a state of under 250. Anything above 250,000 has to go through the master's office.
Okay. Spare, you're out in Durban. Good morning.
Good morning, Cathy. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Yes. Thank you for taking my call. My matter is tax-related. I know that there is a refund that I'm supposed to get from SARS, and they said that I need to submit my tax returns for 2009. But then the company...
Sorry, what year?
Tax returns 2009.
2009.
Okay.
Yes. And but now the company is under administration, and I can't get my IRP5 for that particular year. And they said I should make an affidavit to say that I can't get my IRP5 for that year because the company is closed down or under administration, right? But now they're not getting back to me. So I did the affidavit, but I'm not able to submit those things on e-filing because what they're saying is that it's over a period of 5 years. And apparently you have to make an appointment to go to a branch. And the branches that are close to me are closed off for the month of July, August, and September. Right. So,
Spare, why are they closed? Hello, Spare? Oh, okay. It looks like we've lost Spare on the line. I wonder why all of those SARS branches around him are closed.
I have no idea.
It doesn't make sense.
And I have no idea what tax office he's dealing with.
Yeah.
And also it's very important. Yeah, look, sometimes, when there's a refund due from the receiver, they do go into to make sure that all your arrear taxes. So you have a refund, and before that refund is paid over for the extra tax you've paid in this particular year, they go back into all your tax returns. In this particular case, they've gone back to 2009. Their systems are unbelievable. I think it's called the New Income Tax System, NITS, and they've got unbelievable information. And if you don't submit it, you will not get that refund. Anything that's possible in tax owing, because they're just going to debit. And by the way, let me make this point. If you owe tax to the receiver and you draw money from the two-pot system, before you get it, they will deduct any tax owed to them. So So please make sure that if you go, make sure the receiver of revenue takes its first bite of anything. Coming to that, I don't know if we had that. Would we have the? I tell you why I'm saying this. I'm going away next week, and I've got an extremely busy week this week, and so I'm not going to give my phone number out because I'm not going to have time to get back to any of our callers. But on that particular caller, do we have their number? We've got your number. I will get back to you.
Yeah, I guess it might also be worth its pay to make an appointment to a SARS branch that you can find open. But
I don't know if you can.
So
I need to talk to my our tax practitioners.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Mike from Cape Town says, morning, I have 100 Yeboye2 shares. I want to sell them. How much can I sell per share? Is it the right move I want to take?
Well, I can't comment on what that share is worth. I think what you need to do is you need to phone the transfer secretaries of that company. You can also phone a broker and find out from a broker what those shares are worth and how you go about selling it. That's the best advice I can give you.
The next listener wants to remain anonymous. Brian, from your experience, are offshore-based retirement annuities, high-risk portfolios still allowed? Second question is, for those who have existing offshore-based RAs, does this type of RA give you much bigger growth on the standard illustrated values of 6 to 12%? That's the promise of most policies. Or is it not better to rather invest in a bank with higher growth in investment packages as opposed to a retirement annuity, or to invest in property rather, where growth is phenomenal?
So let me make this comment. Firstly, a retirement annuity can invest 45% of its income, 45% of the amount invested with them offshore. I'm a great believer in long-term offshore, not because I don't think they're good companies in South Africa, but because I think the cutting edge of companies throughout the world don't operate in South Africa. They may have branches here, but they operate globally. I mean, this week we've got a very big week. We've got Amazon, Apple, I'm thinking of the other, Apple, Microsoft, and we've got Meta coming out this week. Very big week. But I still think long term, if you've got time on your side, I would always have a portion of my retirement fund up to the maximum offshore. When you talk about investing in a bank, you're not going to get any tax return, any tax deduction, which you get on a retirement annuity. So I don't think that's an option. And within your retirement annuity, you can still have a part going into property. So you can have any asset class within that retirement annuity, up to 75%, which is in equities and property, both local and offshore, and 25% in money markets. So I would say I would much prefer for saving for retirement to buy a retirement annuity.
Another listener wants to know, any news on when Mattress Bank is opening, Brian?
No.
Mattress Bank?
No, can't help you there.
Brian, are you missing it?
Who's Mattress Bank? Am I missing? Is this a joke?
US dollars under the mattress?
Oh. Okay.
Bye-bye, Brian.
Bye-bye, Kath.
It's time for the latest news.
The top stories this hour: 3 cash heist suspects arrested in the Eastern Cape, and more reaction to Zuma's ANC expulsion. A very good morning to you. 3 suspects have been arrested following a cash-in-transit heist on the N6 between East London and Stadtreim in the Eastern Cape. This comes after police gunned down 5 other suspects. The 3 suspects were caught heading in the direction of Ngcuba, formerly known as Craddock. Police say they found firearms and an undisclosed amount of cash. Provincial Hawks spokesperson Ndipiwe Mhlavoka says the 3 will appear in court soon.
suspects allegedly ambushed the SBV armored vehicle on N6 between East London and Stutterham, as went to a house in Com location at Keiskamahuk. Upon their arrival, they were attacked by the suspect using a high-caliber firearms. The members retaliated and fatally shot 5 suspects. Money was recovered in an original money bag as well as firearms. On a suspicious vehicle was spotted towards Cradock direction, which was stopped by the police and attempted to outrun. The vehicle was shot and the driver lost control, and 3 suspects were arrested with an undisclosed stock of money.
Some residents of Bloemfontein in the Free State say they support the ANC's decision to expel the former party president Jacob Zuma after he campaigned for the rival MK party. Yesterday, the ANC announced that its National Disciplinary Committee had resolved to expel Zuma from the party. It says Zuma has been found guilty of contravening the ANC constitution by prejudicing its integrity. Zuma has 19 days in which to appeal the decision. These residents say the former president knows that the ANC constitution does not allow members to campaign for other parties.
I'm happy that President Zuma is fired from the ANC. It was him who asked for that. For that, he said before elections, he wasn't going to vote for ANC.
It was time, for Jacob Zuma to leave ANC because their group in the ANC, they didn't have any power anymore.
By opening MK, he was distancing himself from the ANC. How do you bring the two together? He has one political party, yet he belongs to another political party.
The trial of 8 former members of the Presidential Protection Unit who allegedly assaulted 3 people on the N1 freeway last year will resume in the Randburg Magistrates Court in Joburg this morning. Yesterday, the matter was rolled over to today to give the defense sufficient time to present its video footage. According to the defense, the video shows one of the victims removing beer bottles from the vehicle in which they were traveling. The 8 police officers were responsible for the protection of the Deputy President Paul Mashatile when the incident occurred. NPA spokesperson Pindim Jonondwani.
Will deal with the video that the defense says they have in their possession. We'll await that process. That obviously the video still has to be authenticated, but the court has provisionally accepted the video.
Gauteng Education MEC Matomechulwane is ready to oversee disciplinary proceedings at the Pretoria High School for Girls this afternoon. This follows the suspension of 12 learners last week. They were implicated in a controversy involving racial comments and complaints about black learners. Gauteng Education spokesperson Steve Mabona says the MEC will ensure that appropriate action is taken.
It's a critical time for high schools, as it were. We are starting with our examinations, so it's quite important that we must respect the space and give children an opportunity to be educated. We know the community is concerned. There's many stakeholders that are concerned about what is happening at the school, but we discourage any, destabilization of the process. Let's not disturb the school. The school must, continue without any hindrance.
And the Venezuelan ambassador to South Africa, Carlos Feo, says the international community must respect the will of its country's people. This after Venezuela's Electoral Commission announced that Nicolas Maduro had won Sunday's presidential polls. The opposition has rejected the results and its supporters have taken to the streets to protest. Ambassador Feo says there were some election observers during the polls.
We have to respect the will of the people. South Africa has the advantage that we have many international observers of these elections, like 15 South Africans were there, indeed was 18 because 3 people of IEC also were there. And as you have seen their statement, the electoral process is very clear.
Recapping the top story at 11 o'clock, 3 suspects have been arrested following a cash and transit heist on the N6 between East London and Stutterheim in the Eastern Cape. For SAFM News, ke Modupi Mohlahlana.
If we have rights, shouldn't we also have opinions? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
When Freddie, a troubled woman, is nearly assaulted outside a nightclub, the toilet attendant steps in to help. Baba, a former child soldier, acts with swift, unstoppable brutality. She's entranced. The pair form an instant, intoxicating connection. Something dark within both of them quickly emerges. Soon, they set about exacting revenge on people from Freddie's past. Baba's skill for violence and Freddie's tinge of psychopathy prove a lethal combination. But they are not the only ones on the hunt. We hunt together, Mondays to Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on S3. Starts 24th of July. Channel your best drama with BBC Primetime, only on S3. Open up.
S3. Individual brilliance meets the power of teamwork. Big ups to the South African men's rowing team for their marvelous performance. Gold was delivered in a glittering fashion at the Olympic Games London 2012. South Africa's James Thompson, Matthew Britton, John Smith, and Lawrence Ndlovu made history as the first crew ever to win Olympic gold in rowing from Mzansi, Africa. And the first Olympic gold in the sport for the African continent. Africa, rise! Magical moments of the Olympics. Brought to you by SABC Sport, proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024.
For the love of the game.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
Welcome to the final hour of The Talking Point this morning. And for our final conversation of the day, we're focusing on underage drinking and how we as a society can begin to better understand underage drinking, and most importantly, what mechanisms, especially support mechanisms, do we need to have in place for our young people to ensure that they are not among those who get caught up in the cycle of substance abuse and find themselves really battling with alcoholism throughout their lives. Joining us on the show this morning is Mokebe Tulo, who is head of brand at aware.org. Mokebe, good morning to you.
Good morning, Cathy. Good morning to your listeners, and thank you so much for having us.
And Audrey Vermeulen is the National Coordinator at the South African National Council on Alcoholism. Audrey, good morning.
Good morning, Cathy, to you and the listeners. It's a great opportunity to be part of this.
Mokebe, let's perhaps begin by the research that you as... If you can please make sure that your radios are turned off in the background so we don't get that feedback. But Mokebe, if you can begin by the research that you as Aware have conducted into the drinking behaviors and patterns of young people, that amongst them indicates that, young people, at least 19.9% of them, who were surveyed said they had their first drink at the age of 13, which is incredibly alarming. If you think about it, a 13-year-old is somebody that has just finished primary school, only entering into high school, and one wonders, well, if they've been exposed at this age, where did they get it from? Where were their parents? Where were their guardians when all of this was happening? What else can you tell us about the research?
Okay. Thank you so much once again, Cathy, for the opportunity. Yes. The numbers are staggering. I mean, almost 20% of young people having had at least their first drink at the age 13 is incredibly frightening. The research that we do is a lot of direct research, as in the people that we serve, which in this case is our young people. We also take into account all of the global research that has been done across the different areas. So, for example, taking into account World Health Organization numbers, desktop research, and of course the research that we do on the ground within the work that we do. So the interesting question is, where do these young people get their hands on alcohol? And disappointingly, it turns out that alcohol is very accessible to young people. It's from all the way from their very own households, carrying alcohol. So, for example, parents that keep alcohol, maybe that's not necessarily locked up, and not in a way to blame parents, but they might not have even thought about it. Some young people have reported to repeatedly being sent to taverns or to liquor stores to go purchase alcohol for adults within the community, whether it be their parents, whether it be an aunt and uncle, or whatever the case has been, or the somewhat older peers that are able to supply them with alcohol. And it all starts with experimentation. We know that one of the biggest drivers is peer pressure and having too much unsupervised or free time on their hands. And sometimes this is the way that young people take advantage of this time, experimenting and then falling into the trap. And as you so aptly put it, the cycle of unhealthy relationships with alcohol.
It's such a difficult thing to try and address, Mokebe, because just on the one issue that you've raised of these youngsters having too much time on their hands, unsupervised, and therefore they start experimenting with all sorts of things. Parents are not at home because more often than not they're at work. You know, they're trying to earn some kind of living. How do we begin to deal with some of these issues? I'm thinking especially if you have parents that are listening to the show and they're thinking, well, what can I do to make sure that my child is maybe not the 13-year-old that's experimenting with alcohol?
Cathy, the question you asked is so important. And the short answer is that it is a responsibility of all of us to support these young people, to support the families, to support the community, because we are intrinsically all a part of some form of community. So when we speak about any of these harm-related or harm programs at Aware, we speak about a whole of society approach to the problem. So it's not just about the young person. It's not just about the parents being responsible. It's not about blaming, for example, the teachers, which a lot of people say, oh no, they should learn this in school. It's not just about the government making sure that there are laws in place and that these laws are being enforced. It is all of us. And if we all dance together and do our part, it is definitely possible to start chipping away at this problem. So the way we have to see it is that, as you said, it's complex. We live in a complex society with a very complex history, and this is how we find ourselves here. And the only way to deal with that is to attack this problem on every possible front. So we have to empower our young people, number one, to be in a position to make the right decisions. There's no reasonable way that a young person is always going to be supervised. So the first prize is to educate them and empower them in a way that even when they are outside of any form of supervision, they are able to make the right decision, that they are able to think, oh no, this is not the path that I want to go down. And then, of course, it is the role modeling that the young people get. it is, as I said, the parents that are part of it. It is something that we do have to address within the educational system in schools. It is something that involves the media or mass media at large. And then, of course, where Audrey, my colleague, comes into it, the rehabilitation part of it. So, yes, we have to look at various solutions and various ways of addressing the problem, and all take the responsibility around what we are able to contribute to solving the problem and get on with the work of doing it.
Audrey, let me give you a chance to come in, particularly from the perspective of Sanka. What would you say some of the patterns and behaviors that you've been able to map out over the years around young people and drinking are, in particular underage drinking?
Yes, thank you, Cathy. I think that the patterns over the years have shown us this problem has never gone away. So we've seen the group getting younger, and from our research studies that we've done, we've got a research study we currently are doing with UNISA. It's a longitudinal study, so we hope that over time we can understand these trends a lot better that you're talking about. But what we are seeing from the research point of view is that the age group to experiment with alcohol is becoming younger. So we're looking at between 12 and 13 years of age, which is a lot younger than what we expected to find. Normally it was only in the late teens, that you would find more experimentation, 16 to 17-year-olds. Now we are seeing primary level already starting to use alcohol. So for us, that's a real concern as Sanka, because we realize that your interventions for prevention should start sooner rather than later. And I love the question you ask about the family, how the families can prevent this, because we believe that's a key component that is neglected. We need to inform families about their responsibilities to educate their children from a very young age. So we even have puppet programs, at the age of 3 to 10 that really looks at building resilience in one's children. But from a parental point of view, it's so important to also make sure that you as a parent know what is this about, that you have age-appropriate discussions with your child about at this age, don't take medication from anyone but your parents. Remember, this is the harms that it causes. If there's a television show and they see somebody that's intoxicated, later you talk to your children about what do you see is happening here. Also with family members, a lot of us have those family members at events that drink too much, and to have those conversations about this. The end for us, it's about the relationship between the parent and the child. If there's a trustworthy relationship, you are able to have these open discussions with your children and even sign an agreement later when they start going out, regarding drinking, regarding, if they're in a tight spot, that they can phone their parents if they need them. So a lot more work needs to be done to educate our parents to be able to build resilient children.
Audrey, as you're talking about the role of parents, you're reminding me of a conversation that I've often heard where people debate what is the best approach. Should parents be the ones that are intentionally introducing alcohol to their children, where they allow them to drink openly at home, but they do it under their supervision? Or is it better to, take a harder line that says no drinking at all until you're a certain age? I don't know that either of those methods have proven to be more effective, but I know that it is a debate that often happens, and different families do go for different approaches.
Our answer is never. You do not introduce drinking to your children or let them have a sip or let them, drink with you or under your supervision, especially not under 18-year-olds. So there's, and I'm going to explain why I say that. the brain of the child is still developing. So as soon as you introduce something like alcohol to the brain, you are releasing very high dopamine levels already, and you are affecting the functioning of that developing brain. And you're already creating that curiosity as well. What can happen if I use more of it? So that is a fine line for me. It talks about what is responsible alcohol use by parents as well, because one also needs to think about the role modeling of what does it look like to have parents that can have one drink and not, drink the bottle. You know what I mean? So it's about really educating parents as well, once again, about their role. And that for me is definitely that we don't advocate that at all. There's no alcohol for under 18-year-olds, purely for the reason that we have a developing brain that can be affected in different ways, and you don't want to really affect the chemistry in this brain that's so sensitive.
So you wouldn't encourage then the approach that some parents have, which says, I know this, teen is going to, or this preteen is going to be exposed to alcohol with their friends. They're probably going to be drinking with or without my permission. I would rather do it with my permission and with my supervision. You're saying that's a bad idea for parents?
No, definitely. I think that one needs to rather focus, and that's why we also look at even the age group. There's a big debate about should we not increase the age group to 21? And it goes back again to the development of the brain, that the frontal cortex, which is our executive function of the brain, only matures at 25, 26 years of age. And that's when you really can make very well-informed decisions. So up to that point, you have to consider how alcohol will affect that frontal cortex. Are they able to make good, healthy decisions? No. If you think of our own lives, and we were all teenagers once, all our mistakes happened before that age group.
I was going to say, I'm glad there's a physiological explanation for all the bad and sometimes stupid decisions that one makes at a certain age in their lives. Yeah,
definitely. So it's also, if you think about 18-year-olds getting a license, most of our motor car accidents are during that age, and they're under the influence because they're not seasonal drivers yet. They don't have the experience to drive yet, including you adding alcohol that affects fine motor coordination, gross motor coordination, and then you have a disaster happening. So those are examples of why we say, please don't expose your children before that time.
Thanks for that, Audrey. Mokebe, is there anything else that you want to add on the approaches that families sometimes take on the question of underage drinking?
No, absolutely. I think 100% agree with the approach that Sanka and others speak of. We have a zero tolerance to underage drinking. It is not acceptable for young people to be consuming alcohol. It doesn't matter whether it's in front of their parents or it is out. It's bizarre to me, and I think it also shows the kind of sort of unhealthy relationship that as a country we have with the substance alcohol. There is sort of no other behavior that is seen in the same light that a parent would do the same thing with, no, you cannot do this. This is actually illegal, but because you are under my supervision right now, I think it might be better if you tasted it in front of me rather than had it out. No, so it's not sending the right message whatsoever. I think what parents should rather be doing is having the conversation around why I'm not allowing you to have alcohol. Why is it that the law says you aren't allowed to consume alcohol until you are at least 18 years old? And the physiological reasons that were given to us by Audrey, for example, are some of those reasons because you are not able to make those decisions. And very importantly, I think that it's not always about making it this big bad scary thing. The reality is that young people, even older people, are able to have fun without consuming alcohol. So the problem here is that the consumption of alcohol is equated to fun. And maybe that's what needs to be broken. And maybe that's the conversation to be had.
Yeah, it's such an important issue that you've touched on there, Mokebe. That I think I said at the beginning of the show that often there's a song and dance that as a society we've built around alcohol, that even when people have occasions at their homes or events, they're not considered to be events until there is alcohol, or when the alcohol comes out is when the party really starts. So there's the element of fun, but it's also something that's been created as very aspirational, and people want to be able to, grow up and buy the most expensive wines, buy the most expensive alcohol, champagne, whatever it might be. And that's not helping from a culture perspective and how youngsters are socialized.
Absolutely, Cathy. And the revised code of conduct, advertising code of conduct related to alcohol, has just been launched by the Drinks Federation of South Africa. There's always been a code around advertising, but some additional guidelines have been put into this. So this is something that is actually enforceable and has been enforced. If an alcohol brand, no matter how big or how small, is advertising in an irresponsible manner and somebody complains about it, it will be looked into and it will be dealt with. It is problematic. The rules state that alcohol may not be advertised in a way that makes it look attractive or aspirational, especially to young people. And, for example, the use of celebrities in certain alcohol adverts are not allowed. So that is one of the elements of this onion that we try to solve.
We're in conversation with Mokebe Tulo, who's the head of brandaware.org, Adri Vermeulen, national coordinator for South African National Council on Alcoholism. How then do we deal with this challenge of underage drinking? What is it that we need to start doing differently as parents, as guardians? Because these children come from a home, they live in a community. When they go to the tavern, they're served by people who are well aware of their age. And I know the culture is different, right? Because if you go to a township, you'll find some families, there's always that uncle who's sending the young kids around to go buy him, a bottle of this or a bottle of that. And society doesn't frown upon that. It's not seen as wrong. Is that also contributing to how normalized alcohol consumption, in particular binge drinking, is in our country? We'll continue the conversation in a moment. I'll also take your calls, 086 000 2032. How do you think we should deal with this problem? It's now 11:30, time for the latest news.
Thanks, Cathy, and a very good morning. With the news headlines, Cathy Mohlahlana. 3 suspects have been arrested following a cash-in-transit heist on the N6 between East London and Stadtreim in the Eastern Cape. The trial of 8 members of the Presidential Protection Unit who allegedly assaulted 3 people on the N1 highway in Joburg last year has resumed in the Randburg Magistrates Court. And landslides in the Indian state of Kerala have killed more than 30 people. Details of these and other stories coming up 12 o'clock.
What is Ushuni, you say? Ushuni has a musical gift and can transform a song. Ushuni can fuse folk music with a popular urban beat or tune. Ushuni can take us on a beautiful musical journey. Ushuni way to Gelo. Join us in unearthing South Africa's next folk music star. 40 talented contestants from around South Africa competing for the ultimate grand prize of 500,000 Rand cash and a recording deal. Angeke basikhone with Ushuni Womhlaba, starting 7 July, Sundays at 6 p.m. only on SABC1.
Channel more reasons to feel encouraged on Afternoon Express, Tuesday at 6 p.m. on S3, as Councillor Sadia Southgate shares how mental health support helps us see a brighter day. Making sense of food labels gets us eating right. Chef Dumi and Jay make a whipped feta and grilled lamb flatbread. That's Afternoon Express, this Tuesday at 6 p.m. only on S3. Repeat Sundays at 8:30 a.m.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
You're still listening to The Talking Point. We're tackling the issue of underage drinking with my guest, Mugebe Tulo of Away.org, and Adri Vermeulen, who is with the South African National Council on Alcoholism. I've got a message here. It says, "Hi, Cathy. Kids drink because they see people which they regard as their role models, which are parents and other members of the community. You can't expect a society with taverns in every corner, a society that applauds people who are drunk, not to have kids who are drinking at a younger age." Adri, what do you have to say to that? And she's right, because when people are drunk in our society, it's not regarded as a bad thing. We take videos, everybody laughs. It's like the drunker you are, the funner the time.
Definitely. You just have to look at TikTok, and all the videos that kids are seeing around that. And the messaging is all skewed up, if you think about it. So it looks funny, it looks entertaining, but the reality is there's a story behind that person that's intoxicated. How is he affecting his family? How is he affecting the community that he's in? He's putting his own life at risk by walking and drinking as well and being intoxicated. So it again goes back to educating our communities that this is a disease, number one. It is not everybody that drinks alcohol will develop this disease, but 16% of them have a good chance of developing that. And then what do we do in terms of binge drinking? And I like what you were saying about binge drinking, because nobody thinks that's a problem. Even with learners, with students, they've got these different poos-on nights, that this is the in thing to do. It's become part of that culture. And not understanding the risks of binge drinking, that binge drinking can lead to alcohol poisoning. It can lead to death even after that. And for me, it's about the lack of education in our communities that we're seeing. Also the stigmatization of it. We have a lot of work to do to just make people understand. We have to feel pity for that person. That person needs help, and needs our assistance. But we look at it from a different angle because, like you were saying, it's normalized. Alcohol is normalized in our communities, in our society, and we don't look at the other part of it. Just thinking about this in terms of the person who maybe drinks and drives. That's what we see, all the accidents in our country. We also look at the risks at workplaces, what are the accidents prone that's happening at workplaces. So it's really creating a more understanding that this is a substance use disorder or alcohol use disorder. Some people develop this disorder. Other people are fortunate and they can be a social drinker, and be responsible with how they handle the alcohol. So I think it goes back to educating our community.
Masinga, you're calling us from Econo. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Cathy. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Cathy, I understand, we keep on pointing a finger back to our children. Now, what do you expect our kids to do when there are no recreational facilities within our areas? There are no sports fields where they can go out and play. Every corner there's a tavern. When you open a TV, the only thing you see is an advertisement of alcohol. Then, when your child or your kid is sitting with you, he sees this as maybe like as your guest there is saying, we promote alcohol. I think how can we promote this when there are no play fields, when there are no recreational facilities for our children? Every now and then, whenever they build houses, they don't leave a space where they can build either a sports field or a recreational facility. And then from there, we blame our kids. Let's be honest. How can we blame our kids when a corner you see a tavern? Where are they going to play? It's either they go and play at the tavern or they get pregnant.
Yeah. And Masinga, the point that you're making is a really important one, because as young people need that entertainment, they need that engagement, right? And if the only place you can go to where they are playing music, where people have gathered, is a tavern, it really limits your options, doesn't it?
So, and then are we going to blame the kids? Are we really going to blame the kids if they don't know where they are going to play? You know, when we grew up, we knew exactly. I grew up in Soweto. I knew that every corner there was a netball court. Every corner there was a playing field for soccer. When the boys are playing, the girls were playing netball. So today, what do you see? Nothing. So now we can't say our kids are turned into drunkards, and then from there we start to say, all right, now, what have we done?
Yeah, Masinga, thanks for that perspective. It can't be the kids' fault. They can't be the ones that sit with the blame.
Let's do something, then they can follow.
All right, thank you for that call, Masinga. Mukebe?
Agree with Masinga. And this is not about blame. We cannot possibly blame young people for experimenting with alcohol, especially considering the kind of society that they live in. We've said before that the practice of alcohol has been normalized. We have to do a lot of work to flip that. So just as it took time to normalize it, we have to do the work to make the new normal not drinking. Just as alcohol has been created to be this cool and aspirational thing, we have to do the work to make it uncool. And how do we do that on a practical basis? We do it through running programs around education. We do it through empowering our young people to be able to stand up for themselves and make the right decisions, even in the face of peer pressure. When you speak, Masinga, to recreation or the lack of places for young people to be able to go to in these times where they are unsupervised, there's a lot of work to be done there, and that is why it is an all-of-society problem. And at aware.org, when we speak about the programs that we run in terms of no to under 18 prevention, we look at recreation. So we run a number of recreational problems, working with partners such as the School of Hard Knocks, United Through Sport, Alto Sport. So this is after school, aftercare, things that young people can be busy with, things that young people can do on a recreational base and have fun. We run in-school programs like the likes of Kimoja, where they can get that tangible education which gives them the toolkit that helps them be able to make these decisions. We do a lot of work in the mass media space. We call our platform Makers of Tomorrow, where we ran a partnership, for example, with one of our local TV shows, Team Some, where we brought up the conversation around alcohol consumption, underage alcohol consumption, which touched on, for example, tavern owners and liquor stores giving access to young people, and how that is contributing to this problem, on how communities and family members and friends within the community cannot be sending children to taverns to go and buy them alcohol, where we spoke about how alcohol is bad for the body, for the brain, and for the future of a young person. And we call our platform Makers of Tomorrow because the underlying fact is that we want our young people to know that if they make the right decision today, they are able to decide what their future looks like. But they cannot do this alone. They need the support of all of us, whether it be community, whether it be myself as an individual, whether I'm child-free or with children,
Sure.
whether it is my own child or not my child. We need programs and the infrastructure that provides young people sports fields and sports tournaments and other things to concern themselves with and interest themselves with after school, so that they're not loitering around.
We've got to keep them busy.
Yes, we need our tavern owners, and a lot of work is being done in this space too, but to come to the fore and say, I will not let my community rot. I live in this community. I own this tavern. It does not serve me to sell alcohol to an underage person. And say, no, you need to go to school. You need to go play sports. And tell their parents, your child came into my facility to try and buy alcohol and see how we can nip this in the bud. And then on the tail end of it, we need the work that is being done by the likes of Franca and Aju, with the rehabilitation part of it for the ones that have fallen through the cracks and have been caught in the cycle. So yes, Masinga is absolutely right. We need to do the work and give young people the tools in order for them to not fall into the trap.
Temba, you're out in Priska. I'm going to give you a chance just to weigh in quickly before we wrap this conversation up.
Hi, Sister Cathy.
Hi, Temba.
How are you? Yeah, Sister. Sorry, you see, time is up now. I wanted to say that we are talking of kids who start drinking at 18. But there are some kids who are already being born drunk already. They grew up drinking liquor. You see? And my problem is, this thing didn't start now. It started in 94. Before 94, the kids were mobilizing each other, motivating each other to change the country for the better, you understand? When the changes came, the country was better. Everything was affordable. They didn't want to go to school. They started sitting by the corners, tuck shops, and everywhere drinking. Now, if you hit a child, a next-door child, because she or he is drinking beer, they'll call 10-111. Then they say it's child abuse. Even if a child can meet, a father can meet his child, there is an interdict. Police will come and arrest the father. You see, everything is out of order. At one point, I remember Mr. Lesufi was shouting. He was furious when kids were shooting, stabbing each other by school gangsters, you understand. Then he said charity begins at home. How can a parent discipline a child when the government doesn't want the parent to discipline the child again? So they come drinking. You understand, sister?
Temba,
and the other thing.
Temba, you are opening now another can of worms that unfortunately we're not going to have a lot of time to get into because we've come to the end of the conversation. But issues of discipline, you heard Temba. If as a parent you hit a child, you end up at the police station. But we also acknowledge that violence begets violence. But what are the ways in which parents can discipline children? And that's why I'm saying now it's another can of worms that needs to be looked into because it is also a critical part of this conversation. Unfortunately, we are completely out of time for today. Let me thank my guests, Mokebe Tulo, Head of Brand Away.org, and Adri Vermeulen, National Coordinator, the South African National Council on Alcoholism. The show is back with you again tomorrow between 9 and midday.
The Serengeti, located on the northern part of Tanzania, bordering Kenya on the north and Ngorongoro in the south. Home to the African Big Five and millions of zebras, birds and other predators. Serengeti 2 returns to the unspoiled corner of the Serengeti for more animal drama. There's humor, heartbreak, and nail-biting tension as new characters move in and familiar faces continue their stories. Channel your inner adventurer with Serengeti 2, Sundays at 6 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
High emotions and tension will prevail from the early moments of the contest between Spain and South Africa in the men's Pool A. The Europeans want to add the sound of a Spanish guitar in their game plan, but the African stars from Zanzi refuse to drop their heads. This is the Olympic Games Paris 2024. Spain battles it out with South Africa on Wednesday, 31 July at 7:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and reports on SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. SABC Sport is the proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024. Hashtag the global battle of great athletes.
For the love of the game.
The book reading. Please note that the views expressed in this book are not that of the station. Listeners' discretion is advised. SAFM presents another episode of The Door, an addict's journey, read by Simpson Kumalo.
I was ready for anything, and this released me from the burden of trying too hard and trying to please everyone, including my counselors. Now I was ready to please myself and focus on me, and to let the noise from others not affect me nor my recovery. I decided that I would respect everyone and be courteous with all, and I was prepared to play by the rules and not break any of them. I became a bona fide resident, a citizen of the center, a committed resident who wants all this recovery and in all its forms. I was finally at peace to process my life in recovery. I focused on my spirituality and tried to build myself inside out. Besides, we're not what we think we are. Even though I was a mess and was a deplorable human being, I could not and would not write myself off. Inner peace had to start with me. I needed to force myself and accept myself with all my flaws and faults. There was just too much at stake, and I was afraid if I don't give it my all, there would be a point of no return. I'm sure if I went back to God in total surrender and repentance, He was bound to forgive. I decided to turn to Him and trust Him to come through for me. Is there anything too hard for my God? I even had, for the very first time in a long time, the urge to pray, to really pray. Perhaps my redemption from the sin I had committed would come from being on my knees. I guess prayer does answer all things, and here I was having a redemptive moment. Given what I had done, there is no way I could have been a Christian. It was not possible. How could I be? I broke every rule of the Bible, at least the way I understand it. I was a mess that messed up big time, but I heard somewhere written that, though your sins be as red as scarlet, they can be washed and made as white as snow. Perhaps there is hope, and this hope is built on nothing else than Jesus Christ and His righteousness. I grew up in church, and church was part of me, and I always believed in a higher power, and I even occupied strategic positions in the fellowship. I know what it means to have gone astray and to find yourself completely out of the way. I was surrendered now to His will and purpose and ready to deal with every issue there was to deal with head on. Good or bad, I will not look back. I felt like the prodigal son who went out and spent it all and was now eating and dining with the swines after he had practically lost everything. Yet, in that despicable situation, when he came back to his senses, he had an internal conversation with himself and declared, "How many of my father's hired servants have enough to eat, and here I am languishing with the swine? I will rise and go to my father and say, Father, I have sinned against you and no longer worthy to be called your son, but make me one of your servants in your house." He had messed pretty badly and lost everything and was at rock bottom when he came to his senses. He recognized that he was undeserving of any mercy. Little did he know that his father was always hoping against hope that his son would find his way back home and be reconciled once again to his loving father. I think at this moment a penny dropped for me, and I can safely say I too came to my own senses. I would rise equally and go back to my Father in heaven and plead for mercy to rewrite my life. I was a shadow of my former self and had allowed life's challenges to ravage my body. I was a lost soul who at this moment